Hello and welcome back to Macray's Keep. On tonight's stream, we will be working on our rendition of the very talented Sam Riegel's character, Fresh Cut Grass, from Season 3, Campaign 3 of Critical Role. And we will try to get him finished up and into a scene. If you were checking social media at all today, you've seen we've got Laura Bailey's character, Imogen, in a scene, and she definitely needs some help, and hopefully we can get some additional party members in there for her, and get her the kind of help she needs. Character is, of course, not the player. So what we've done here is we've done a little bit more than what we have in the past with just taking a figure right from either Hero Forge or Eldritch Foundry and bringing it into Blender and painting it up. Obviously, we've done some painting here already, but a little hard to find kind of a stock figure, even with all the customization options available to us at the various sites. So we had to do a little surgery, a little modeling, if you will, using just barely stretching some muscle in Blender. Certainly, again, relative to what Blender can do, we're certainly doing relatively little, even in this case. But our figure came with feet, which, of course, one of the hallmarks of Fresh Cut Grass, FCG, is his wheeled locomotion. So although this does not exactly match some of the art or the official art that's been done for the character, this is our take on it, and I'm pretty happy with how it's going so far. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to continue doing some painting on him. We're going to do some more of the silver and blue highlights. We're going to rough him up a little bit. Hopefully, we're going to try to. FCG, based on the art that's available out there, has seen some seen some better days and has some scuffs and scrapes and dings and dents. So even though when we get him into a scene and he'll be about that big, we won't see much of it, well, we still want to be able to see some of it. So that's what we're going to focus on tonight. And right now, we are going to get to it. If you haven't seen the art that we're talking about, you can find it, I'm sure, a number of places, including Twitter. There is an article on belloflostsouls.net that goes through all of the Season 3 characters and has some art for each of them. Those drawings, paintings will be what we're using to as the basis for our figure painting. And then once we're done with everyone, we'll have them in a scene, and we'll do some compositing that way, and we'll have a whole party to look at. So right now, we're going to get into edit mode and start work. So the first thing I think we're going to do is we're going to get some more of the silver kind of highlights that are kind of underneath the main goldish color skin, if you will. And I think what we're going to do here is we're going to start with some of the knees, and we're going to get in, and I think we're going to do this kind of, I don't know if I'd call that a ball joint or a rotary joint. We're going to do that. We're going to do some of this right down here. We're going to leave these, his kneecaps, for lack of a better term, we'll leave those gold. One of the highlight colors, maybe one of them will make blue, we'll see. Again, not going for the exact match for the art um, that we've seen, but again, we're going to do our best to faithfully represent or recreate with just a little bit of artistic license. It's kind of forced on us with using not having complete control over the model itself. So one of the things I'm going to do here is with this skin color, it gets very awkward sometimes to do selecting when we're using a metallic or a specular color here. Kind of hard to see where we're selecting, where we're not selecting. So I'm going to take this base color, and for the time being, I'm going to add some roughness, and I am going to demetallicize it. We'll come back and add that in later on, but it makes our selection process a lot more clear, not only for you, but definitely for me too. Just an update for those of you who have been following the stream. We are using Blender, open source and free software, not just a neutered version of the software, but it's fully free. Anybody can download it and use this software without paying anything. It's quite amazing, especially given the capabilities of the software, which we're only using a fraction to do our painting and some minimal modeling. There is a new version of the software out that we are actually not using right now. I did download it and did do some work with it, but unfortunately, the export utility to X3D, or Extensible Markup Language, um, is not working. So I have a report in with Blender, and we'll see if they can get that squared away, or if there's something that I'm doing that I need to do with the models to get that to work. We'll get that squared away as soon as possible, and we'll get into Blender 3.0. But for right now, we're using Blender 2.93, which is the latest version prior to the big 3.0 upgrade, which for us is really fine. Most of the Blender 3 um, enhancements were with rendering, full scene rendering. Something we're not really doing because Blender is not the terminus of our workflow. X3D is, which is the 3D VR language that we use at Macray. So we are limited there by what we can do in Blender, that only those capabilities that will export to that format are things that we can really do. But it is fine for the main purpose of what we're doing here, which is taking an unpainted figure, even though it's digital. You can certainly think of it in the same terms as an unpainted physical miniature that you would get from the store, or you would order from someplace like HeroForge or Eldritch Foundry and print yourself, and then paint with actual physical paints. Where obviously there are differences between the physical and the digital paint, quote unquote, but really it's very analogous in many ways. And we have a lot of benefits that the physical painters don't have. It's very easy for us once we get everything selected out and painted up to change, tweak, adjust, try out new colors, because the time-consuming process is what you're looking at right now, which is going through and selecting out certain areas of the model, labeling them, and assigning what's called in Blender a material. And for our purposes, that's basically a color of paint, if you will. We can add certain things like specularity and metallic aspects to it, as well as control the roughness or how much it reflects things. We can also do pretty cool things with transparency, and all of that does translate over, and we can get some pretty decent effects. Certainly, nice paint type effects that you would see with any physical figure. And for those of you who are looking to learn Blender, or at least learn it enough to do what you see in me do right here, it's really quite straightforward. Um, we are selecting parts of the model, and we do that in a couple of different ways. You can see right now we're using what's called the circle selector and just clicking on areas of the model to select them. Although we'll get to what we do with this selection in just a second. You can also, and to get into selection mode, you just hit the C key and you can get your select. Then your middle button and mouse wheel controls the size of that. A right click will get you out of select mode and allow you to move around in the model again. Once you're out of select mode, your mouse wheel controls zoom on the model. If you click and hold that mouse wheel button or the center mouse button, give or take your hardware, you can then rotate around on the model. And if you hold down the shift key and then click and hold the center mouse button or mouse wheel button, then you can pan around like this. And the combination of those things allows you to fairly easily move around. We're going to get into here and we're going to select this out too. See? All you have to do when you select something like this is just touch any part of any of the triangles that you see on the screen, and that will become part of the selection. If you accidentally click and get some what we call overspray, then you can click instead of the left mouse button to click and select. You can click that center mouse button or that mouse wheel button to deselect, and so you can kind of clean up your mess if you make one. And with just a little bit of practice, you can be moving around the model pretty quickly. Now, before we go and add or assign a color to that, because we're going to assign the same color to this over here, we're just going to select this, all of this really quickly, what you saw there. And another way we can select is we can use what's called the box selector. So if I want to, this is not really what the box selector is made for, but just to show you how it works. We will run into spots where that is very handy, and definitely will highlight that when that comes up. But basically, it's click and select, and give or take the source of your models. This can be a little easier or a little more work. We'll get into that a little bit more when we do our next figure. And I'll show you the differences and what that means to you as the perspective figure painter. You may notice that some of these details that I'm focusing on here are quite small, and you'd be right. You'll hear me say many times that a lot of the very, very fine detail work is unnecessary, because when we get this figure finally finished, we're not going to be looking at it anywhere at near this scale. We're going to be looking at it more like at this scale. And so you won't see any of those very, very small differences or fine lines or fine little triangles that may or may not get selected in this process. See, we've got one right there. But we want to, I like to be as complete as possible, even though for the most part, a lot of this stuff would not be seen. See, up in this corner up here, no one will ever see that when we're back out like this. But for me, I kind of like to go up, and you can see there's some space up here which really should be this. And so we're going to grab it. And we'll get into more of the differences between some of the models based on where you get the model from. This particular model is from Hero Forge, which I'm sure most people who have done anything with figures, either virtually or physically, have heard of, at least if you haven't gone there and played with their figure generator, their figure maker. It's actually pretty cool. Personally, I prefer to get my figures from a different site, Eldritch Foundry, and the reason for that is quite simple. The models are made a little different structurally, and the Eldritch Foundry models are just much quicker to paint. And again, it's difficult for me to explain that while we're looking at this particular model. But when we get our next model, we will get into the differences because you can paint one of the Eldritch Foundry models magnitudes of time quicker, just because of the way that they construct their models. These models are all STL files, or stereolithography files. Stereolithography is the technical term for 3D printing, which when you go to a site like Eldritch Foundry and you want to buy a figure to print on your 3D printer, they will sell you an STL file or a stereolithography file. We're actually using these STL files just as the basis for the import into Blender. And then that's the end of our involvement with the actual STL file. Right now, you can see up here we are in a .blend file. This is the native Blender file format. And we're only in here while we're working in Blender. And when we're done with this figure, we will be exporting to yet a third format, and that is the aforementioned X3D, which is a markup language that is XML based, that allows for 3D and virtual reality scenes and models on the web. And that is the system, or the software that is the basis for the 3D and VR scenes at Macray's Keep. And we will get more into that here, if not this stream, certainly in the next stream, when we finish up old fresh cut grass here and export him to an X3D file, and then upload them to Macray's Keep and drop them into a scene with the other characters we're going to do. And we're almost done with these knee joints, and we will assign the colors. Okay, so now that we have that all selected, and again, I'm going to kind of move around here. I like to give everything kind of a once over to make sure we don't have any gross overspray or anything like that. And because I've already defined this secondary silver color here as a skin 3, we just select that, we do assign. You can see that behind the selection that all changed. We can deselect now. And we have our ball or rotary joints done there. So the next question is, after we save our progress, I think we do we want to grab this and isolate this as well? And I think I do. This the model has a lot of different very definable sections, and although based on the artwork, the original artwork, there are some differences. So we're going to take a little artistic license here, and we are going to kind of do our own take on this and make some adjustments after the fact. See, I got some overspray here. So again, just center mouse button, click on that. The question that is going to be next on my mind is, what color are we going to do for this area here? And I'm making a mess of this. So best to just zoom in and get it all right here. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them right in the chat or in the comments if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube. I'll be happy to do my best to answer them. Again, as you'll hear me say fairly regularly, I am certainly no Blender expert. And just learning a lot of this stuff as we go. And may or may not be able to answer your questions. Now you see we have a little anomaly in the model here. And you'll have to always just kind of decide how you want to deal with that on your own. Do you want to honor the anomaly and color this all the same as this, or do you want to keep kind of the spirit of the model, excuse me, and do your best to just try and kind of blend over that? And in this case, I'm going to do the latter there, and I'm going to try and just keep this okay. So what I think we're going to do with this, I'm going to go do the other side real quick, but I think we're going to define yet another color here. Maybe a darker silver or gray, and do this kind of part of the joint. Just bring it out a little bit and set it apart, and give our model a little bit more variety, make it a little more interesting than it might have been otherwise. As you can see, I mentioned when you're selecting, you don't have to grab everything. All you need to do is touch anywhere within one of these triangles. You can see here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 triangles right here. I'm going to get them all at once. So clicking on what's called a vertice, or one of these points where various edges meet like that, is the most efficient way to do it. Or you can hold the button down and just move your mouse across if you're not too afraid of overspray. And again here, just like on the other leg, we've got, whoa, Control Z, like in most Windows applications, will undo an errant mouse click like that. But I'm going to leave this the base gold color and move on. And we are just about done here. And the more you do, the more you'll catch some of these smaller details. My apologies. I have a cat in the way. Come on, Jinxie. Okay, so why don't we do a new material or new color? We're going to call this one very originally Skin 04. And we are going to, again, we must use shader nodes. This is one of the restrictions for exporting our model to X3D. We can only use the more basic coloring uh, options for shader nodes. And we are going to make this, I think, a very kind of dark gray, but metallic and not very rough at all, kind of shiny. Sign that. And there we go. I like the way that looks. You may notice we kind of hedged a little on the connection of the wheel to the legs here. There is no connection. Shh. We may remedy that. It'd be pretty easy to put a cylinder in here as a form of axle. But again, when we are using these figures, they're going to be quite small and more like this, and really it's impossible to tell very small details like that. So we'll decide later on whether or not we want to put that detail in there or not. But for right now, we're going to save our work. And we've got some more ball joints to do down here. I think we're going to do these kind of the same way we did, and you can see where I took the feet out of here, these kind of open spot here. And again, that's something that at some point we may put some time in Blender to recreate the missing part of that mesh there. But again, and I apologize for sounding like a bit of a broken record on this one, but it really is not something that could possibly even ever be seen once we get this to the terminal part of our workflow. And in this case, I'm doing single clicks instead of dragging. Here, I'm dragging because there's no chance really of overspray. Then when I get close to an edge like that, I can switch back into kind of a more careful mode. And I'm kind of painting on the inside here, which I shouldn't do because as you can see, I've just done something I didn't want to do. Okay, now I'm going to do something here too that you may have been asking yourself why I haven't already. Earlier in this process, the stage of the figure we isolated out, so we can turn that off, wink, and we're also going to turn off our wheel, yoink, and that allows us better access to these areas that we want to paint here. Without having that stuff in the way. And here I've got a bunch of overspray. So again, center mouse button to deselect that. And then we'll get back into selecting. Again, some of this looks a little weird because we've got gaps where the model is actually open. That's not something that we usually encounter. Again, we had to do a little surgery on this model if you're joining us late to get rid of the feet. That's how we didn't really have an option when building the model to have a single wheel as the mode of locomotion. So we kind of had to do that ourselves. And that's not really something that I've done a lot of or had to do a lot of, is actually go in and modify these models. But this character is definitely unique, and so it necessitated some rather unique measures. So we've got to figure out where our ball joint begins and ends here. And let's do a little bit of this before we go and kind of figure out how we're going to deal with that. Let's get the rest of this squared away and taken care of. All right. So all of this looks good. And I think what we're going to try to do here, at least for the first pass, is try to not select this stuff and see what kind of line we can get here. Not a very good one. Yuck. What does it look like on the other side? We're going to have to deal with the same sort of thing over there. All right, well, option number 2 is to kind of honor the model. And this will try to get as smooth a transition here as we can. And again, at a distance, it's not going to be that big a deal, but we do want to do our best. Okay, so let's do the other side here. I don't need to worry about that border, so why am I? All right, so here we've got this, like on the other side, we've kind of got this kind of rough area here. I don't know exactly what the best way to do this is. But again, because we can only select triangles, we are at the mercy of the model in this regard. So we'll do our best and move on with our lives. And we can always make fine-tuning adjustments after the fact. and again, we've got some fairly odd visuals here because we've cut out part of the model to accommodate our wheel instead of the kind of normal feet that were here. But it's no big deal. All right, let's take kind of the big picture look here. We've got to get the Achilles part of this, I guess, would be as accurate as anything. A little high for the Achilles, but all right. All right, so let's go back to good old skin 3, our silver highlight color. Deselect this. There we go. And now that we're pretty much done, at least from the hips down, we can put our certainly put our wheel back in. We'll leave the stage turned off for now. It tends to get in the way no matter what you're working on. Now, I think what we're going to do is just do a little highlight in the back of the head here next. Just to make some of this stuff pop a little bit. I think we're even going to do this stuff down here. Again, this figure quite different from the kind of normal, more humanoid, I guess, figures. And the question is, where do we want this highlight to stop? We could leave it stop right there. We could bring it down into there. We could even bring it down to here. I think what I like, we're going to do a couple of things here. At least try them. We're going to do this, then we're going to assign this. And then let's Kind of hard to tell on that one. What part of that is. I think we are going to select these. And again, just to kind of get a little bit more accent, a little more contrast, so we don't just kind of have a single color here for so much of this, even though we do want the gold part to be very dominant. All right, I think we're going to do his elbow ball joints just like we did with the knees. And when in doubt, if you're not sure what's what, just rotate or tilt or do something to move, and you can usually see pretty quickly what part of the model something is. And again, overspray, pretty easy to deal with, but I still like to be pretty careful with it. If you're super sloppy, I think you're going to tend to spend a lot more time cleaning up your overspray than you are actually painting what you want to paint. I think it's just good habits. And in this case, the model's not doing us any favors here, so we are just going to honor the model. Okay, well, and we did some other stuff too, so I think I'm going to save this real quick, and then we'll go do the other elbow. And I believe the blue points on here are sort of replacement material or patches, things like that. It's the impression I got from the original art. And again, I think we're going to try and honor some of that too, as the original art also has some pretty obvious rough edges where our friend here is kind of taking it on the chin, so to speak. And we should be able to do some of that pretty nicely as well. Although again, how much of it is going to be noticed when he's kind of in full figure mode, if you will, um, remains to be seen. But again, part of this is kind of the fun of the creative process of making decisions and doing the painting. If nobody notices, well, we know. And then again, to find out kind of what's what here, a little tilt back and forth, and you can see that this sort of cylindrical shape here that angles in, you can see that this clearly is that, if by just angling like this, except this corner here is what we're, the piece we're working on. So we're going to grab that. We've got some real weather shenanigans going on. It's the middle of December and it's quite warm out, quite windy. And I guess they're talking about some pretty nasty storms possibly, not of the snow variety, which is up here in Wisconsin what we're typically used to at this time of year. Alrighty, so I think I want some more blue, not much. I think what we're going to do is we're going to make one of his kneecaps blue. Seems like something that is as likely as anything to need replacement from some sort of calamity. So let's grab one of these. And right or left really doesn't matter. The other blue things seem to be of a quite random variety, so we will pick a side, and that's that. this here is a goof. We seem to have missed it when we did our knee joint. We'll come back and fix that in just a second. Missed a little sliver there. That's why I like to kind of just go around everything once I believe that it's fully selected. See, we missed a whole surface here. Working in 3 dimensions can be a little disorienting, to be certain, especially if you're really used to working in 2 dimensions, like in Photoshop or some other medium. Having to actually turn the model to see a surface that from here looks like that's the end of it. This line right here ends this surface, and that should be that. But if you just tilt it like this, you're like, oh, there's a whole nother surface right here. And one of those peculiarities, if you will, of 3D. So we're going to grab this. We're going to set this to our skin 2, or our blue color. And then before we forget, we're going to come in here and select this. And selecting extra doesn't matter. We're assigning it all to the same color here. There we go. Yeah, well, he's got some arm and thumb and a knee over here and just one kind of blue piece over here. Looks like whatever happened more heavy on this side. Maybe we could even do something a little bit more with that. Maybe something like, I don't want to do something that goes all the way around. I don't want to do something. I think we're going to do these rotary joints in the shoulders as our silver color. But I don't know, do we want... We could maybe do this piece of the neck here in blue. Well, we don't have to decide that right now. Let's get these rotary shoulders here done in our silver. All right. So it looks like this goes all the way over. Whoa, we're in his head there. Let's stay out of there. Yep. All right. Looks like we're in the Death Star trench here. We're going to start by grabbing all of this. And we're just going to follow this right around until we can't. If we can't, and then we're going to go over to the other side of the model. You can see here, again, right here, kind of we saw there's like a little dark line here. It's like, oh, did we miss something? And you just tilt a little and you realize, no, that's part of the kind of shoulder itself. Then we come in here, and then this is more of what we're after. And as you see here on the right hand side of the screen, we're actually inside the model here. We can move over and look inside the model. And if you've seen some of the end of the videos, you can see where sometimes that can be very useful. In this particular case, I don't think it's going to be useful, at least not for this part of this joint. But I'm sure at some point we will get back inside of a figure or a model to get some part that is hard to get at from the outside. All right, and we're going to, just like I said, we're just going to follow this right around. And click, click, click. And you can see we're coming up on where we started, which is what I meant when I said we're going to follow this right around. All right, let's just assign that right away. Yeah, I like that. All right, we'll come over here and do the same thing. If you'll excuse me for one moment, I'm going to grab a beverage. We will be right back. And we're back. So let's continue on with our shoulder here. And just like the other side, we're just going to follow this around. This one is in slightly different positions, so we're seeing different aspects of this part of the model. This vertical surface is what we got to make sure we get. Again, things to be careful too vis-a-vis the 3D aspect of it. It looks like we've got everything here, but if you realize that this blue part is 3D and it's out a little, I think if we tilt this, we're going to see there's a whole bunch of stuff down here that we need to get. And it doesn't take much practice to start to kind of anticipate where these types of things are going to happen. And a little zoom, and we got everything we need. All right, and again, a little tilty back and forth here, and that kind of defines this line very well for us. And we can tell that, yeah, we got everything there. All right. So one of the decisions to make with something like this, especially a model like this, is how consistent you're going to be or how much you're going to apply reality to things. You can see we've got our joints here that we've done, joints here that we've done. We kind of did some work here on these, the inner thigh area here. You can see that this hip ball joint here, if we were going to be, completely and utterly consistent, this stuff would probably be silver, and maybe it will. Maybe we'll do that. We've got another kind of joint here in the wrist. Do we want to do that in silver? How far are you going to take that? And these questions are, creative questions that you can answer for yourself with every figure you do. I think we are going to do the wrist at least. Um, I want to break up the larger swaths of the base gold color a little bit here and there. And so we've got a fair bit here, and I want to just highlight this. And again, this is, again, I use the word highlight, and I think that's appropriate here because it's kind of what this silver is acting as a highlight color. Again, don't be afraid to zoom in. Like I said, getting into that corner like that, it's going to be impossible to see for anybody, even somebody who, like yourself or me, who knows it's there. But you know, you got to draw the line somewhere, and you can draw it where you want. But sometimes it's just kind of nice to get in and take a look at the figure, take a look at the model. You get to learn a lot just from kind of screwing around with all this stuff about how the models are built, what you like about them, what you don't. That can inform your decision with regard to where you're going to get your model from. You're going to get it from Hero Forge, you're going to get it from Eldritch Foundry, you're going to get it somewhere else. Are you going to you're going to just look on the internet in general for some sort of figure, whether it's made for tabletop RPGs or whether it's just a figure you like. Um, those will be things that you have to decide for yourself. But again, it comes down to, do you have a game session, the next day and you're trying to crank out a couple of figures for it? Or are you painting this as a commission for somebody where it, even if they don't notice every nook and cranny for your pride as someone who's taking money to do something for someone else, you want to do it, basically as good as it can be done. Those are two very different scenarios, and for myself, I might do different things in different ways depending on all sorts of circumstances. If I'm in the rush and I need a figure for the villain or a new party member, and I'm running a game in a couple of hours, you bet I'm gonna kind of hurry up and do that. You can always come back and fix it up and do it kind of the right way or the way you really want to do it when you have some more time. Nothing wrong with that because we're talking about digital models here. When you paint it and then you export it, there's nothing wrong with coming back in and either repainting or touching up or whatever term you want to use and re-exporting that and just copying it right over the original one that you kind of did quick and dirty style. And again, we're going to talk in a future stream about some of the differences between some of the models and the providers of these models and why you might want to get them from one source versus another. And you can see here, I've missed a spot there. We'll come back for that in just a second. And again, is that anything anybody would ever notice? Nope, I guarantee it. But it only takes a second to fix, so we're going to fix it. See, and here, if I'm not mistaken, we're way in here, but you can see how this part of the model actually flows all the way through here. And out here, it's very difficult, certainly at some angles, to even see that, but you can see we're coming up on the other side of this circular or cylindrical part of the model. So even though it's really thin right here, you can see inside the model on the right hand side here. I'm going to keep going like this. And here's where we started. All right. Beauteous. All right, now so what next? What next? I think what we're going to try and do here a little bit is maybe rough him up a little bit and see if we can get something that looks like some damage here and there. I'm not sure how this is going to work. We can try doing it with some paint first of all, and if that doesn't work, or maybe even if it does, we can even get into a little sculpting. And I've done very little of that in Blender, but we can see what we can come up with and maybe give him a little a dent here or there and see how that looks. So let's I notice in the original there's some of the paint is scruffed off kind of up in this joint area here, and then down along his chin. Looks like his chin has taken the brunt of some damage here. Now, because we can only select one triangle at a time, we've got to kind of find a good line to end that so it doesn't just look like it's just a square cutoff. We need to kind of blend it a little bit, if you will, and that can be a little bit tricky. So I think let's try to do something like this. Let's try to come down along here and then look for a way to try and kind of edge that up without making it look too chunky. This one, I don't think we're going to have a choice. We're going to have to run this up here. Otherwise, it's going to look just probably pretty terrible. There, how about that? There. So, in this, we're going to call this skin 5. This is going to be metallic. We want this to be a little rougher. I'm going to assign this like this and then deselect it. Well, well, that's not ideal, but let's leave it like that for now. Let's try our hand at some, see if we can't do a dent or two here or there. So if we go to sculpting, and we're going to, let's try the clay thumb here. There we go, kind of like that. And my lights just flickered. If we disappear off the internet here, you'll forgive me. Now we don't want to overdo it with this. This is definitely a less is more kind of thing. So we were talking about the fact that we thought he might have had a tumble more on his left side here, our right. So I think that's where we want to kind of focus on our dents here. So let's go back out into. All right, I kind of like that. Looks a little roughed up there. Question is he still too gold? Is it just too gold? I don't know. This figure has much more body surface than the original art, so it's kind of hard to tell. But I kind of like where we're going here. Kind of like where we're going. I'll tell you what we can do here. I think what we're going to try and do is do an export and bring him into the keep and see what he looks like in there. So the first part of this is, now that he's saved, we are going to do the export to X3D. And that is very simple. We're going to go to the export menu and we're going to go to extensible 3D. I've got folders for that, and we're going to export them. All right, now I'm going to change my window capture here, If you'll bear with me for a moment. Let's see if I can manage OBS here in a reasonable fashion. There we go. I've done it. So here we're logged into Macray's Keep. And I'm not going to go into every aspect of the site just now. We're going to try and get him into a group here, the main group or main context of this game. And then we'll get him into the scene if you've seen it on Twitter. But the first thing we've got to do is we've got to get the model uploaded to the system. So we are going to use the file manager here. And again, at Macray's Keep, we use a windowing system for the site so that you can basically open up any part of the site that you want at any time. And you don't have to worry about jumping between pages. Right here, we've got the file manager open, so we're going to go to the X3D folder. And now we have upload options here. So this is going to be a character instead of just an object like a chest or a chair or something like that. And we're going to choose the file. And so here's our fresh cut grass X3D, 8:17 p.m., which is local time here, that we just uploaded, or just exported, I'm sorry. We're going to pick that. And you can see we're uploading in progress here. And you'll see that this will just take a few minutes. That file was 5 meg. And now we are good to go. So let's scroll down here. Here he is here. Now this, the first thing before you get him into an actual scene is we need to take a look at him in the model lab. And I can tell you right now, we need to do some scaling. Most of the figures that come out of Blender are very large in scale when we bring them here into the Keep. And there's just, it's unpredictable on how that works, depending on the source of the model, how it's done. We can do the scaling in Blender. Personally, I prefer to do all the scaling once the figure's in the site here. That way everything is nice and consistent. But we're going to open up the model lab here. And you can see he's loading in here. And you can see, whoa, this is pretty weird looking. But if we back out, you can see, well, here he is. But he is much too big. And we're going to scale him way, way down. And we're going to reset that view. Hey, and there he is. And again, we've got in the model lab, the lights are turned way up. So he may look a little weird, but I do really like how the dents came out. Very good. And we may want to go back into Blender to adjust some of our colors, colorations. You can see our silvers look a little white here. We can make some adjustments on that once we get back in there. But the one thing that we're going to do is we're going to adjust his rotation here. And that just matches him up with his viewpoint, and I'll demonstrate that in just a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn on the rotation controls, and we're going to point him this way. We're going to take a look at top down and make sure that he is pointing the way we want him to point. And it's about like that. Turn that off. All right, well, we're going to turn that back on and go a little bit this way. Yeah, it's better. Okay, we've got him scaled, we've got him rotated, so that's good enough for here. If you want, you can always take a snapshot of whatever you're doing. Again, this is really more relevant once you're in a scene, but you can always just snapshot this and then download that to your computer. Let's see if we open that up. We get a nice picture of him. This is just a ping that you can save off if you want. So next thing is we need to create a character for him. And instead of doing that from scratch, yeah, well, maybe we will just do it from scratch. Now we're going to grab one of these. We're just going to grab Sunny, and we're going to move him up here into this group. A lot of this is just test data. This is going to be fresh cut grass. I believe Sam plays him as a cleric. Level 3. Actually, I've got, bear with me while I refer to Sam's character here, just to get a couple of his stats. And he is an, yikes, it's Aeromation. Aeromation? I'm not sure what that is. You know, we don't know what his speed is. Well, anyway, that's good enough for now. And we're going to select a figure for him, and that's going to be fresh cut grass that we just uploaded. And we're going to save that. All right, so now you can see here we have fresh cut grass is in the main group context along with Imogen, which again, if you saw on social media, we have a scene where she's doing some battle with some baddies. This is a scene that we're going to drop him into, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. You can see that here is our Imogen character fighting as the Mind Flayer looking dude, and our Demon Queen. If you missed some of that from previous streams, if you want to focus in on anything, you can always just grab this and focus right in on her, and then you can pivot or however you want from there. Again, we're seeing other things here. We're just going to go into walk mode here, and so we see that. So now to get a character in, it's really quite simple. You just click on the toggle over here to take characters in and out. We're going to switch to top-down view on this map because any newly added figure is added at right up here at the 0, 0 grid, and you obviously can't see all the grid on this map, but when we grab fresh cut grass and we add him in here, you can see now we've got a new figure loading, and here he is right here, and we're going to drag him over here to help out old Imogen, and then we're going to focus in on him. We're going to make him magnetic so that whenever we move him, he snaps back to the ground. And I'll show you what that means in just a second. So if we were to move him and he drops back down for us, and that's nice. Or if he, oh my God, we've moved him underneath. Because we're using a 2D screen and a 2D pointing device in your mouse to move in 3 dimensions, it's oftentimes much easier to go to top-down view if you want to place your figures or where you want to place them. So we're going to do that. We're going to move him over here. Whoa, getting a little squirrely here. Then we're going to rotate him around. You can just right-click on any figure and you can get some info about him, hit points and class. Oh, we didn't assign him an actual 2D image. We can do that too. Whether his light source is on or off, we can do things with his light. You can see that our demon queen over here, you can see she's got a light source. And she's got this nasty looking blue sword, and it sheds a blue light. If we take a look at her, you can see her light source is on, and if we do, you can see we set the color and the intensity, the radius. We can up that if we want to, or bring it back down. And then you also have the rotational controls. So we're going to turn old fresh cut grass's rotational controls on, and we're going to grab him and turn him so that he is facing the right direction here. And now we have some help in scene here. Oops. So if we, oops, wrong button. And we just maneuver around here a little bit. And if we want to, we can always look at, we have all these different viewpoints. So you saw a top-down view. We have kind of a default scene view over here that if you want to see things from afar, we're going to be adding a bunch more of those in. But if you want to switch to the viewpoint of any one of the characters, you can also do that. And that's why we aligned our viewpoint earlier when we did, when we were in the model lab. So we could check, and if we want to go over to Imogen's viewpoint, we can say, oh yeah, there you are, she's looking over there. Or if we want to come around and see what the Demon Queen is seeing, she's looking right at Imogen, and that's going to be a problem. Or if we want to see what our Mind Flayer character is looking at. Also looking at Imogen, just seeing fresh cut grass there out of the corner of his eye. But you can also go into, so right now we're kind of in what's called examine mode, and we can do all sorts of different things with rotation and moving around the scene that way. You can also switch into just walk mode, where now we're gonna actually be walking on the surface, and we're gonna follow terrain and everything like that. We can turn over here and turn over here, and move around that way to get a better view of what's going on in this scene. And in the scene, as long as we're here, we can go over just a couple of the options. We can set the width, height, and depth of the map. The height isn't really going to matter here because we don't have the walls turned on and off. You can see that. You can turn those on and off like that. And the ceiling as well. But in this case, a cave type map doesn't really matter. We can add fog effects of various colors. So if we want to, we can dim down the scene by using fog. And you can change the color of the fog. So if we want kind of a nasty dark green fog, we can do that. But in this case, we're just going to turn that off. The DM light is a kind of a global light that here we can see a lot of the map here, even though there's only one light source on. The DM needs to see everything. if a character were logged in or a player were logged in at the same time, they would not see all of this unless this the global or DM light was turned on for them. Here we see that makes no effect because we are a DM here, but that would toggle the global light for the players. And here we can change the color and intensity of all of that too if we want to. We can set sky colors. Right now, because we're in a cave, it's all black, but you can set, again, 5 different colors from the horizon up to the zenith and from the horizon down to the nadir. What we are really in here is a sphere of virtual space, so there's a lot we can do with that. And then the cube map is a totally different animal, which we'll cover at a different time. Whether we're locked or not locked here, this locks all of the objects. So if you right click on an object, you can see that this is locked. That means if you grab it with your mouse right now, you're still just going to be navigating in the scene. If we unlock it and you grab it, you actually move it. And again, just like the figures, you can have that magnetic so that no matter where you move it, it snaps back down to the ground level. But it's a good idea to generally have things locked once you have them in place. And again, you can lock everything in the scene just by clicking that. It makes it nice and handy. But again, now we've got 2 of our party members in the scene. On our next stream, we'll be working on, I'm not sure who we're going to choose next. We'll see about that, and we'll work on that figure and start adding our critical role figures to our scene here, battling our bad guys. Maybe at one point through here, we'll grab an actual bad guy, and then we'll see what happens from there. We'll make some scenes, maybe based on some of the encounters in the actual campaign. I think that'll be a lot of fun, and that way we can kind of learn Blender together. You guys can learn how to create scenes in the system, so that you can get your players in here and start running when the closed beta starts early next year, and start using the site for what it's supposed to be used for, playing games. But for now, I think we are going to call that a stream. We've got some good stuff done tonight, and in a previous stream we did some stuff on the system here, but I was failed to properly show the screen or capture the screen through OBS, so we missed all the visuals, but this time we got some, and so hopefully this will give you guys a little bit more of an idea about why we're painting these figures and what they look like once they're into a scene with some lighting and some fog and some other effects like that. And we'll just keep building on this and see where it goes. So again, thanks for watching. If you're on Twitch here, don't forget to follow. And if you're watching on YouTube or one of the other platforms, please like and subscribe or do whatever that site calls it. We'd really appreciate it. You can find us at Macray's Keep at Twitter and Facebook. Probably Twitter is where we are the most. And then we stream pretty much every night between 7 and 9 o'clock Central Time. Excuse me one second. And again, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please don't feel free to reach out on social media or in the comments. Thank you once again.